told to do. Good evening. We're about ready to start. So if we could get the doors closed. Yes?
The doors on the other side of the building are locked, and people are having trouble finding here. If we could wait a few more minutes, please.
It's being taken care of. There are signs that are being put up right now.
Yes, but it's only just now. So
Okay.
I'm sure that there will be people that are late, even if they try to get here early.
We can't delay the forum much more than 5 minutes, so. Okay, thank you. Let's give it a couple minutes. I think they can edit this.
Then we'll reduce our question time by that 5 minutes.
Right,
Okay.
okay. We have quite a few opening remarks to get through on the rules, so I'm going to start, and hopefully anybody outside will catch up here. I'm Sharon Breen, and I'm the president of the local League of Women Voters for Minnetonka, Eden Prairie, and Hopkins. And I'd like to welcome our candidates, our audience, you all, our viewers, on behalf of the League of Women Voters in Minnetonka, Eden Prairie, Hopkins, and our co-hosts, the Edina, Wayzata, Plymouth League, and the South Lake Tonka League. The League of Women Voters is a 104-year-old organization with a long history of encouragement of nonpartisan civic participation. And we also do things for the local government and also increase understanding of major public policy issues, and we try to influence public policy through education and advocacy. The League does not support or oppose any political party or candidate. The views expressed in this forum are those of the candidates, not those of the League of Women Voters. It is our purpose in sponsoring forums such as this to provide citizen voters with an opportunity to hear candidates discuss face-to-face the issues that are important to you and the questions that you submitted. This is a nonpartisan forum, so we ask that campaign buttons or campaign t-shirts not be worn, so hide them, or any signs or literature distributed inside this room. There are tables outside. And now I'd like to introduce your moderator for this evening's forum, Deb Brinkman of the St. Louis Park League of Women Voters chapter. Thank you, and take it away, Deb.
Good evening. Tonight's forum is provided to give you the opportunity to learn about the candidates running for Hennepin County Board District 6, their background, motivations, and goals in relation to the seat that they seek. Candidates will be answering questions submitted in advance or submitted during the forum. To the extent possible, these questions have been reviewed by an impartial committee familiar with the issues. It's our intention in good faith to select questions that represent the interests expressed by the voters, that are focused on the future and not based on hindsight, that are relevant to the office being sought, and are not personal, hostile, or embarrassing or unclear. Questions will be addressed to all candidates and may be consolidated or edited. There's never enough time to cover all the issues in a setting such as this. If your questions were not addressed, please feel free to contact the candidate directly. The rules for this evening for this forum are as follows. Candidates will be allowed an opening statement with a maximum of 2 minutes. During the question and answer period, answers will be limited to 1 minute. Unless otherwise designated by the moderator, opening statements will be given in alphabetical order, and questions will be answered in a rotating order. When we do the closing remarks, we'll switch the order so that we'll go backwards from there. A 15-second warning will be given to the candidates while you're speaking. The candidates will also be given the opportunity for a 1-minute closing statement. Candidates, please finish your sentence quickly when you see the stop sign or you'll be interrupted. We ask that there be no demonstrations in support or opposition to the candidates or their positions, and that the candidates be allowed their full time to get their points across. Recordings of this event, whether in person or by computer, may not be used without the express written approval of the league. The league will only allow audio-video of this event to be broadcast in its entirety, except by the media reporting on the event. If you have a question, please write it on a 3x5 card available from our volunteers and raise your hand to have it picked up. The candidates running for Hennepin County Board District 6 are Heather Edelson and Marisa Simonetti. We'll now proceed with the 2-minute introductory remarks. First, Heather.
Thank you, everyone, for being here, and thank you to the League of Women Voters for hosting this forum this evening, and thank you, Deb, for being a moderator. My name's Heather Edelson, and I won the election, the special election, on May 14th. And since taking office at the Hennepin County Commissioner's Office, I've been hard at work. We have hired 2 staff. We have met with all 16 of the mayors. We have 16 cities in District 6. I've been meeting after meeting of how the county works. It is complex, it is big, and we have a lot of pressing issues for our district. I was just out on Lake Minnetonka. Aquatic invasive species are a big issue. Water, Hennepin County and where we are with water, District 6 actually has the most water. And AIS, aquatic invasive species, are a huge issue that we're facing. Economic assistance and having staffing and making sure people are getting their needs met. Affordable housing. These are all very serious issues, and they require us to show up in a way that takes people's lives seriously. This is not about me. This is not about Heather Edelson when I come here. When we run for office and we show up in these jobs, this is about the work that we do for the people. We are here to serve the people, and with me, I just always know that that's what you will get.
Thank you, Heather. And Marisa.
My name is Marisa Simonetti. Thank you to Deb, the League of Women Voters, and to my son Malik, who's 6.5. He's here to support tonight, and each of you who showed up to support, engage, and grow. I've been a part of our community since 2013. I'm a controversial businesswoman. I ran in the special election and only lost the only 2 on the ballot by 1,000 votes for my very first election ever. So this is a time where we're seeing a lot of change in the community. I've been participating in events with the Minnesota Research Justice Center to bring restorative justice to the community. And last night I made calls with the community organization Tone Up, whose goal is to empower justice-impacted individuals to get out and exercise their right to vote. Our county has problems with high property taxes, concerns about the future of our economy, and increasing crime. Today, what I look forward to doing is talking about and exploring our vision for a better future. A few things I'll touch on is how the community can respond appropriately to crime to bring more restorative justice, a practical plan to reduce property taxes, and wherever else the questions submitted decide the conversation may lead. It feels like all of us can agree that Hennepin County needs some major changes. Many of us have a variety of perspectives on how we're going to accomplish that. Today is our opportunity to explore and create our story of resilience and renewal here in Hennepin County. I'm thankful for the opportunity to be here with you today and look forward to where our conversation will take us.
Thank you, Marisa. We'll start with our questions. Again, these are 1-minute responses. Marisa, we'll start with you for the first question. And it is a general one on the role of being a commissioner. The question is, what do you feel is the #1 issue that the commission faces, and what would you do to resolve it?
The commissioner's job is primarily an administrative job and role, and they play a huge role in deciding what each of our property taxes are going to be. In 2023 to 2024, they raised them 6.5%. Minneapolis just passed for their 2025 plan. They're increasing their property taxes another 8.1%. So one important role that the county commissioner has when they generate revenue to pay for valuable services that the community uses is to do so in a responsible and wise way that doesn't make home ownership difficult for people who may have fixed incomes or families who are just starting out. And the other role that county commissioner is a huge part of is the justice system, because they fund county corrections, the sheriff's department, and so they get to work intimately with the community to help reintegrate people and make them valuable parts of society.
Thank you, Marisa. And Heather.
Thank you. So this is where, being a former lawmaker, I was in the House of Representatives for 6 years, and coming to the county, you have to reject the question, and I apologize. There's not one pressing issue, there's multiple. There's multiple big issues that our county is facing. And I would actually say one of the number one issues that we're facing is making sure that we have enough staff to run the strong county services that we have. We have a really great infrastructure, but one of the issues that we have is making sure that we have enough staff and we'll be able to retain the staff and pay the staff appropriately. We have negotiations going on right now, and that is obviously a really challenging time. Probation, we have county attorneys and the sheriff's department. Sheriffs are working double shifts. At times they are working to staff some of the understaffed police departments in district, not only across Hennepin County, but not necessarily in District 6. Golden Valley was short several officers. Minneapolis was. So when we think about one issue, it's not one, it's multiple.
Thank you, Heather. Our next question, Heather, we will start with you. What skills do you bring to the county commissioner job and the duties?
So part of being good at doing public service is making sure that you have good relationships, not only with the community members that you serve in the community. I have been on multiple boards and commissions. I've grown up in Hennepin County my entire life. But one of the things that it's not only having good relationships with the community as well as other elected officials, which I bring that great I already have this established relationship with the state lawmakers, but it's about having, too, what I bring is lived experience. I grew up to a single mom where we didn't have a car my entire life until I was 16, and I saved up working at Frank's Nursery and at SA gas station being a cashier to get my own car. I was the first one to go to college in my family. I understand struggle and what is going on for Hennepin County residents and just how life-saving these services are, because I was one of the people to receive those services. They were a lifeline for me and my family, and so what you get with me is somebody not only with lived experience, but that cares about people.
Thank you, Heather. And Marisa.
Thank you. Last night at the tone-up meeting, they had Attorney General Keith Edelson there. He's controversial to many. Love him, hate him, somewhere in between. He had a really touching message, and his message was, it doesn't matter where someone starts or their past, that could be the reason why they're qualified to take action. And so Hennepin County has been going through a lot of challenges. I've experienced a lot of challenges in my life, and I always land on my feet. So I'm someone who's not afraid to hold the line, who has a duty to defend. Many of you have seen the news, recent things that have come out, and as we continue to go forward, there will be more evidence showing that I made the right decision. So we've got much fraud in Hennepin County. We had the current commissioners try and push forward a 49% pay raise for themselves, to the outrage of many. We need someone, yes, 49% pay raise of their own salaries. So we need someone who has a duty to defend and is not afraid to take a stand. Thank you.
Thank you, Marisa. The next question, we'll switch topics. We'll talk a little bit about the budget. So the budget you'll be managing you'll need to work with all the other Hennepin County commissioners. Marisa, we'll start with you with this question. The question is, what strategy will you use to manage that budget when you'll need to work with all the other commissioners?
It feels like everyone has alignment of vision, that all the commissioners want Hennepin County to be better. There's just a little variation on how they see that happening. because Commissioner is a financial administrative job, it starts with the same exact way that you and I do in our homes and our families. Where can we optimize things? Where can we make an alternative this for that may be a similar product but a cheaper price? We have things like the HERC that drive up costs to Hennepin County Medical Center through the pollution that they put on minority communities. And as a business venture in and of itself, it's losing money. It's not a good project. So there are alternatives for things like that on the table. And there's just ways to be wise and responsible and good stewards that we can do going forward. So thank you.
Thank you, Marisa. And Heather.
Thank you. I'm really curious what you mean by duty to defend. I won't lie. I really would love to know. With that budget, so we just started the budget process. Yesterday, we set forth the max levy at 5.5%. So that's as high as we will go. Counties across the state are looking honestly at higher amounts. We understand that we need to balance ensuring that people can stay in their home and they're not priced out. We have things like people's home insurance that has skyrocketed because of climate change. It's a huge issue. So when we're looking at budget, what I'm looking at is making sure we're getting investments, because I represent District 6. I'm going to make sure that we get investments in District 6, but also making sure that we're being practical how we approach things like the blue line and making sure that we've learned from things from the Southwest green line. So making sure that we're investing in transportation and housing. We know people need housing. So how are we doing it, and how are we being smart when we're making these investments, I think is a really critical part of looking at a budget.
Thank you. Our next question will be on basic communication. Heather, we'll start with you. Explain how you will keep your constituency informed and address voters' concerns.
Thank you. So what we have been doing since I've been in office for a little over 3 months now, we've been sending an email twice a month just to update you on what's happening with Hennepin County and with my office, what I'm doing. I've been also posting on social media. We take calls, multiple calls a week in our office or every day. And so we're trying to communicate as much as we possibly can. I have a lot of experience with that from being in the House of Representatives, trying to figure out the best ways but honestly, I will say there's barriers because most people don't know what a county commissioner does. It's actually not only a financial job, it's actually a complicated job. And there are multiple factors to it. So we're working on it. It's a work in progress. If you have ideas of ways that I could be doing it better or ways that I could do more outreach, please let us know, because none of us are going to always do it perfect, and so I always think that there's opportunities to grow, and you have a commitment that I'll be doing that. But we do have a community coffee coming up in the next few weeks, so let me know if you'd like to attend.
Thank you, Heather. And Marisa.
So how do you get the community involved in knowing and what you're doing? You attend community events that are impacted by the job that you are a part of. If elected, I'll continue to do exactly what I'm doing, going to events like Tone Up, being part of the Minnesota Justice Research Center, meeting with people, voters, people who live in the community who are impacted by the decisions that we would be making. I think that's one of the most important things, is getting down with people, not just talking with the higher ups and the people who can endorse you, but talking with everyday people, hearing what their lived experience is, what their life is, taking their perspective. So there's a lot of different approaches. One thing is that's really important in getting with the community is transparency. These board meetings have been 16 minutes long. They've been pushing through these things. For example, the 49% pay raise outrage, and there's a lot. Thank you.
Thank you, Marisa. Our next question will be on resources, identifying resources. Marisa, we'll start with you. When deciding on a controversial issue, whom do you go to for advice, and what resources do you use?
So personally and professionally, when I am dealing with a challenging issue, I have a very tight circle of people who I trust. And there is a matrix by Simon Sinek, and he talks about Navy SEALs. And there's a high trust and high competency people. There's people who are low trust and low competency, and then there's each of these two boxes too. And he will pick the person who is lower in competency but higher in trust over the low trust, highest performer every single day. And so I pick people in my life and keep people in my life who are high trust, high competency, and anybody else, they kind of keep it moving. So when making difficult decisions, I have people who I consult, and you also hear from the community as well, and community leaders on how these decisions would impact them.
Thank you, Marisa. And Heather.
Thank you. So actually, a really good example of a controversial issue that I've had to encounter while being on the board so far was actually the pay increase, and I voted no, and I spoke in opposition to it. And how I really dealt with that was looking at the economics of what would that do to our budget. I looked at what other commissioners are paid across the state of Minnesota. I looked at how large our county was. I looked at the staffing pay for the county. So there's many things that you're going to look at on my own. I'm going to do that. But I will also go and I'll talk to the community. I spoke with several mayors and I talked to them about how they addressed pay increases. I talked to some of my colleagues that are also county commissioners. But ultimately, it was something right away on a controversial issue. I'm pretty balanced, pretty moderate. While I'm a Democrat, I've always been a moderate at the Capitol. And so my intention is to be a moderate on the county board.
Thank you, Heather. Now we'll switch topics. We'll talk a little bit about the youth. And Heather, we'll start with you. How would you work with local school districts to ensure our youth are successful?
That's a great question. At the Capitol, I worked a lot with youth. Youth mental health is actually an area. I'm a clinical social worker is my background. There's a lot of work that we can do to be preventative. We look at the student survey that is done every year with the school districts in public schools, and the students themselves will identify things that they're struggling with. One thing we all know, if I asked you one thing, if you know about youth right now, what are we struggling with? It's with youth in their phones, right? And then the mental health implications because of the phones. So much of our life is tied up. It's like another limb. What I would say is I've already been in contact actually with Jen Westmoreland, who ran for the seat as well, and she and I are working together on a project to really make sure that we're getting mental health resources in our schools. Stacy Stanley, who's the superintendent of Edina Public Schools, and I are in communication about some projects that we as a county can do to help make sure that we're helping our students, because the county plays a role in this. We play a role in prevention, and I'm really excited about the collaboration we can have here.
Thank you, Heather. And Marisa.
Yeah, so I think one thing that really matters to me and is important as a mother are children, families, safe and secure homes. One way we start by creating safe and secure homes is making them affordable. People deserve to have a safe and secure place to live. So not overtaxing people who own homes, who may be on fixed incomes, or who are looking to purchase their very first home for the first time, and the monthly payment is too large. I just finished my degree from the University of Minnesota. I have a Bachelor's of Arts in Psychology, and I focused on a lot on trauma researching and understanding how mental health for children plays a foundation. Having a safe and secure home, a safe, secure attachment figure who they can go to when there's something going wrong. And if you have that person, you can figure most things out, right? People are pretty resourceful. So, thank you.
Thank you, Marisa. We've got one more question on youth. Marisa, we'll start with you. What policies would you advocate for to address juvenile crime on the light rail stations? Oh, light rail trains, excuse me. Do you want me to read that again?
Yeah, I'm taking a moment to think, because the light rail is a pretty complex issue. The first question I would ask myself is, why are these youth choosing to spend their time there? What need is it meeting for them? And it sounds like and so I'd want to do a little more research on that, but my first guess would be they're looking for a sense of friendship, safety, belonging with their peers. And it just happens to be the place where, one, drugs are sold, and two, they may find themselves getting into trouble. So this seems like something that could be addressed on the community level, by having people in their lives, whether it's teachers, parents, friends, neighbors, who provide a positive alternative. There's great youth programs, whether it's football after school or painting or some sort of art, which give children redirect. And say, well, what about this? Or what about this? What are your passions? What are your interests? And channeling that same energy, that youthful energy, into things that build the community and grow. So I would love to see programs like that invested in.
Thank you, Marisa. And Heather.
Thank you. Well, that's a good question. It's actually, last year at the Capitol, there was lots of violence that we were dealing with on the light rail. And it was more specifically with adults, and a lot of it actually, you guys, there was a lot of drug use, there was a lot of fentanyl, there was a lot of crack use, and so we were trying to get in there and try to figure out how we can address some of those issues. So we did pass along, we worked with Met Council to make sure that we have people that are going to be walking the trains, violence disruptors, we have more police, but it's almost like a safety advocate. There's a name and I can't remember, but ultimately, with Southwest Light Rail opening up in 2027, I mean, please let there be no more delays, right? It's something that we're going to have to think about. And so I think working with the schools, working with law enforcement, working to early engage with people, youth, I really do believe in prevention. And there's a lot, I think we need to invest in prevention and diversion. It's one of the best systems so we don't have to be so heavy where we're ruining a kid's life. But I think there's a lot of work we can do. And we already have light rail now that we can work with. So.
Thank you, Heather. All right, the next question. Marisa or Heather, we'll start with you. More on general public safety. What improvements do you want to implement in the area of law enforcement and correctional services? And what is your role in implementing any changes?
So I would say retention, recruitment are two big areas that we need. There's more women going into law enforcement, which is actually a really cool thing. So when you look at the numbers of who's graduating, it's a lot of women. Women are going into schools, but it's actually not enough. So while we can change how we maybe practice, we have a lot of, actually all throughout District 6, one thing that's really neat is that we have embedded social workers in all of our police departments, and they're really successful. All of the police chiefs, I've talked to all of them, are really excited. Adding more embedded social workers is a good thing. But I think retention, recruitment are probably the biggest issues we face. And so, and this really honestly ties to again, county, it's not about local, it's not about state only. You have to know about all of these things in order to be successful. We need to make sure that we're dealing with the idea that we have an immigration problem that's not working for us. People are not we're not able to have people immigrate to this country to fill jobs that we need, and we really need to have a hard conversation with that. And the county is actually able to do that, and I'd like to see us really push on that next set, or when the legislature starts again.
Thank you, Heather. And Marisa? Yes.
Yeah.
What improvements do you want to implement in the area of law enforcement and correctional services, and what is your role in implementing any changes?
So county commissioner plays a huge role in funding a lot of these projects. They've identified two things that directly contribute to recidivism, people reoffending, and those two things are homelessness and unemployment. So Hennepin County currently has programs that work to address those three things. One thing that, along with the light rail and some of these drug issues, they have programs that are understaffed that do chemical dependency treatment, because addiction, research has shown, is a health problem, and when it's addressed on that level, you really get to the root cause and help people, empower people to move forward in their lives. One program that I think also is awesome is MRRA, the Minnesota Rehabilitation and Reinvestment Act. From what I've seen, they teach people trades and jobs in exchange for shorter sentences, so people can come out and have a job, have employment. And on the diversion side, we've got Canopy Roots, which diverts 911 calls that are mental health related. Thank you.
Thank you, Marisa. Our next topic will be on the HERC. Marisa, we'll start with you. How would you handle Hennepin County waste disposal if the Energy Recovery Center garbage incinerator is taken out of service?
So I ran in the special election a couple months ago, and this is one question that's been on the table for quite some time, and I'm sitting here wondering why it still needs to be addressed. It's polluting minority communities. Everybody knows this. It's a social justice, so it's hurting people. It's driving up social costs, financial costs, yet nobody's done anything about it. There's viable products, alternatives that are tested, actually concept tested in other areas. The Zero Burn Coalition has been trying to work with Hennepin County to bring in some sort of change that's better financially, that's better socially, and they've encountered a lot of resistance. So my question is, I wasn't elected, but why, if it's such a big deal, and everybody who was on this six of us, everybody was like, yeah, we gotta solve this issue. It's a big problem. It's polluting minority communities, and here we are 6 months later, and nothing has been done about it. So one thing my grandpa always taught me, always believe what people do, their actions, not what they say. Thank you.
Thank you, Marisa. And Heather.
Well, so there was a vote with Hennepin County to close, before I got onto the board, to close the HERC between 2028 and 2040. Over 1,000 pounds of trash every day are burned there, and 75% of that trash is coming from Minneapolis. Only 25% is coming from the suburbs. Where do we put it all? Is the discussion. It's not just something that you change overnight. So unless people want, I don't know, maybe to trash to be in their backyard, or we're not going to know. We have 35 landfills in the state of Minnesota, 35. Do you know how many of them are in Hennepin County? Not many, I think one. So the reality is it is very, very complicated. Public policy, when we want to make massive change, it takes collaboration, it takes efforts. At the state level, we just passed the Extended Producer Responsibility Bill, which doesn't even take place for 2 more years. But that's saying when you produce, a business produces in the state of Minnesota and you sell products, that we have to be able to recycle it. So I've been having multiple discussions with the Zero Burn Coalition, actually even tomorrow I have one, but it is not something you change overnight. We need thoughtful leaders that are going to understand that there's implications for just turning off the switch.
Thank you. Our next question, Heather, we'll start with you, will be on healthcare. Heather, what is your take on the challenges facing Hennepin Health and your thoughts on strategies to address these issues?
Well, that was a big issue. Hennepin Healthcare is our county hospital. It's a level 1 trauma center, and it's a state treasure, quite frankly. There are multiple things that have happened over the last 6 months. There was some transparency where health insurance changed on the board, and that came up on the special election. Health insurance changed, employees were not engaged, and they kind of found out abruptly. And so a lot of trust was eroded during that time. There was calls to dissolve the board. And so right now, I just proposed yesterday a BAR, which is a board action resolution, that says we will, if there ever was to be a call to dissolve the county board, that there would be a process. We cannot just close, we cannot just absorb and have the hospital have instability and have it go back to the county without any warning. There's legal implications. So there's a lot of trust that needs to be rebuilt. It's something actually I've been working a lot on. I think it's really complicated, but we need to have more transparency. We need to build trust, and it is something that you have my commitment that I care about.
Thank you, Heather. And Marisa.
Would you repeat the question?
Absolutely. What is your take on the challenges facing Hennepin Health and your thoughts on strategies to address these issues?
It feels everywhere, in every single person of the community that I've talked to, the number one concern for this election season is financial. And that's not just in the community, it's also in some of these businesses. There have been funding concerns in invaluable services that people need. So one thing that's incredibly important and we need to correctly allocate funds for is some of this chemical dependency treatment, so that people, they're not bad people, right? They've made maybe some decisions but everybody has the opportunity for redemption. And so investing in programs like this within our healthcare system, making sure that people who have chemical dependency issues are treated with healthcare so that they can begin clearing their minds and their mental health, so they can reintegrate and be welcomed back into the community and become valuable members of society, because they have the potential to do that with just a little help. And Hennepin can do that with their healthcare.
Thank you, Marisa. All right, we have one more question on healthcare. Marisa, we'll start with you. Pain is a major healthcare expense, and non-drug pain management options should be considered. Currently, acupuncture is covered by some insurance companies, but not all. Would you support a bill that mandates insurance coverage for acupuncture as a treatment for pain? Why or why not?
I grew up, I was homeschooled all 12 years, and my parents did a lot with chiropractics, acupuncture, and natural medicine. Now, if you have a broken bone, you want to go to the emergency room and address it on that level. But for some of these other things, there can be other ways to address it. And I think acupuncture, chiropractics, for some people, when they talk, this is not medical advice, I got to give the disclaimer. When they talk with their doctor and they say this could be beneficial for you, the benefits outweigh the risks, they could possibly give it a try. And it's all about having choices and allowing people to make choices for themselves, to empower people. And so I think it would be great and awesome if people had more choices when it came to their bodies, their bodily autonomy, and their health care.
Thank you, Marisa. And Heather.
Thank you. And, I just want to address one other thing from Hennepin Healthcare. One of the big issues that our county hospital faces actually is uncompensated care and reimbursement rates. The Medicaid reimbursement rates need to go up. Uncompensated care is growing, and this is actually a national issue. So this is, again, something that we're going to be working with the federal government on. In terms of pain, in the state of Minnesota, actually, we did pass a law already about requiring acupuncture be covered. But there's some parts that we cannot actually mandate. So commercial insurance, for instance, that's more of a federal issue. So there's so many things that we can do, and as a county, we wouldn't really be able to mandate that. We could probably put it in our plan that we would be able to cover it for our county employees. There's ways to do that, but I know that I am all for acupuncture. I think it's great, and I was also the chair of the Medical Cannabis Task Force looking at alternative ways to deal with pain through cannabis.
Thank you, Heather. All right, our next question will be on development. Heather, we'll start with you. A major responsibility of commissioners is to promote economic development. Please give specific ways you will be able to do that.
So that, it's going to be a big issue, actually. I had a meeting today about the Blue Line. And so looking at economic development around the Blue Line and also the Southwest Line, the Green Line, is something that we care about. I mean, small businesses absolutely are important. And I've always been a supporter in terms of trying to make sure that, for instance, when we had the pandemic and I was in the House of Representatives, trying to open businesses was one of my top priorities, because we needed to open them safely in order for people to have jobs to go back to. So trying to find balance with business and commerce is really important. But I would also say the county's in the business of the people, and the business of the people is making sure that we have housing, we have healthcare, we have human services that are working for folks. So that is really the job that I see the county really caring about.
Thank you, Heather. And Marisa.
One key way that we can promote economic development within the community is not placing burdensome property taxes on people. I don't know if you guys checked your bill, but I notice when mine goes up. The county commissioner, because they set property taxes, they also work with the district attorney's office to approve or deny property tax petitions. They don't approve it, they have assessors who approve or deny, but because they work with the district attorney, they play a role. And most people may not realize how simple it is to actually file a property tax petition. You Google property tax petition Hennepin County, up pops a website. You fill out the form, you email it in. One of the current challenges is it can take up to a year to have your petition heard, and that's a long amount of time. That's 2 payments. So if elected, I would promote economic development, safe, secure, stable homes, rewarding people for purchasing homes, investing in the community by approving property tax petitions and not driving up property taxes again. Instead, being efficient and resourceful with the current resources and addressing fraud.
Thank you, Marisa. Marisa, we'll start with you with this next question. One more question on development. The question is, what changes would you like to see in the areas of building codes and zoning that you have control over? Please give an example.
This building codes and zoning, I personally don't have any experience with building codes and zoning. What I do know, though, from people who do have experience with it, is that it can often be a slow and frustrating process. And in terms of economic development, let's say someone purchases a house. They own that house. They need to get a project done in a timely amount of time for a financial reason. Maybe they need to sell their house. They have a pressing reason why they need to sell, and they need to get a project done. And if there is a very long waiting time and codes and violations and all these things take such a long time to get it through, it can negatively impact their financial future. So with everything, streamlining systems so that people are served more quickly and efficiently, because that's the number one complaint that I hear. These things move too slowly and they cause financial hardships and implications.
Thank you, Marisa. And Heather.
Well, thank you. So when we look at zoning and codes, that's really going to be the city. It's a municipal issue. But what I would say, there are things, I had a meeting with the Watershed District, and Watershed, so Minnehaha Creek, that has most of District 6, like Lake Minnetonka's and the Minnehaha Watershed District. And they're collaborating with district cities on projects to make sure that we have the runoff is not polluting our waters, which I think is a really important thing that I would like to see us do more of. Protecting our water, it's actually one of Minnesota's most precious resources. And so having things like in Edina, actually they helped with Arden Park, and you should have seen the controversy around this, but everybody loves Arden Park now, right? And we also have protected and filtered a great deal of water. But the other thing I would say is, this is not necessarily, it's a zoning issue, but MnDOT actually speed limits on county roads, we actually do not control those, which I've learned, and it infuriates me. So I would actually change that rule, and I actually want to look at that this year, because so in Orono, for instance, on County Road 6, there's some traffic, or there's construction happening right now, and we're having some safety issues, and I can't change the speed limit, even though it's a county road, and trust me, I want to.
Thank you, Heather. All right, we'll switch topics now. We'll talk about labor. Heather, we'll start with you. Hennepin County has almost 10,000 employees and 16 bargaining units in our unions. How do you propose to work with them during this contract negotiation session?
So right now, thank you, that's a great question. And we have one of our labor leaders here, so I can guess where that came from. So we have, like I said earlier, our 10,000 employees are what makes the county able to do the important work they do. And so I know that there are a lot of complicated issues around labor negotiations right now. I think some things are happening. I was just informed of a few things that are not going so well. Know that what I think District 6 cares about is public safety. And so if there's any issues around that, and honestly, in retention of our employees in Hennepin County, I will definitely step in when we need to. And so I'm gonna let the labor process work right now, but if needed, I definitely understand that our district really cares about making sure the county is able to do its work. We cannot do its work as being commissioners alone. It requires all of those employees, those well-trained, dedicated employees, and I know that.
Thank you, Heather. And Marisa.
Contract negotiations. I think the most important way, in my experience, working with people, you sit down and you listen with them and you talk about what are their needs, wants, what's their vision to move forward for the future, because everybody, like it or not, has to find a way to work together. And one thing I think that is excellent from 2023 to 2024, the Hennepin County employees, people working, did receive a pay raise. And I think that's great because the cost of living have increased substantially. People are feeling inflation. They're feeling increased expenses. Crime is up, and so that drives up property taxes. It drives up your home insurance rates, your car insurance rates. And so with working with the 10,000 employees, it seems like there's a lot on the table that's currently working. And so if there's an issue brought forward, you hear it out, you listen. Otherwise, let a good thing work.
Thank you, Marisa. We'll start with you with this next question, and the topic is on emergency management. What improvements do you want to see in the area of emergency management?
So correct me if I'm wrong, but the emergency management that it sounds like we're talking about would be, it sounds like a 911 call.
Right.
Everybody's looking like maybe yes, maybe no. I'm going to take, 911 call. So one program that has been really incredible is Canopy Roots. And so when someone makes they're currently an organization here, when someone makes a 911 call, and people feel that it may have more to do with a mental health challenge and need a more trauma-informed, gentle and kind de-escalation response, they send out people from their team as an alternative to the police. And they've had really good success with that in Canopy Roots because they're able to de-escalate conflict, which results in less lawsuits to the county. There's been some controversy, to say the least, towards police. And so when we have alternatives and options and choices, we can get better results.
Thank you, Marisa. And Heather.
Thank you. This is actually one of the big issues for District 6 from meeting with all of the fire chiefs and the police chiefs. So Edina has its own EMS. So we have our firefighters are also paramedics, which is essentially EMS. Outside of that, the 15 other cities in District 6, they use North Memorial or Hennepin Health to do their emergency response. And those times can, how Hennepin Health does it is they have stations where you might be at Hopkins or you might be at Minnetonka City Hall, somewhere, so in the vicinity, and then they're gonna respond to calls, but they might get called to another call in, say, Minneapolis or another area. The response times are challenging. I know that there's a lot of discussions at the state level we've been talking about for years on this issue. It's a huge issue actually in rural Minnesota. So I think it's something that we're going to have to visit. I know that there's been conversations about having 2 paramedics in response. We're not going to be able to staff that. There's just not the people to do it. So I think it's honestly a big pressing issue. I know the firefighter chiefs in District 6 are on fire about this issue. I'm well aware of it. And really trying to have conversations to figure out what we can do to improve response times.
Thank you, Heather. All right, we'll switch topics now and we'll talk about people with disabilities. Heather, we'll start with you. What else should we be doing to support people with disabilities in Hennepin County District 6?
Is it starting with me? Sorry.
Yes,
Oh,
please.
okay, good. Sorry, I did not hear that. Okay. There are so many things that we need to do. Honestly, it's hard to make a list, but there's min choices assessments, which they are slow, they are lagging. So a person, I kid you not, this is the thing that has to happen. So a person that has a disability that could be for the rest of their life, maybe they're in a wheelchair for the rest of their life, they have to sometimes have an annual certification it's the same way. That creates a barrier for that person, and we can do better. So this is where the county and the state need to work together to figure out how to improve how we treat people with disabilities. Is it we want to make sure there's no fraud? Sure, but can we value the fact that we are creating a barrier for that person that has a disability? So honestly, that there's some assessments and things that we've been looking at for the Capitol, and that I think at the county I would like to make sure that it goes on our intergovernment relations, which is our essentially county priority list. That's one thing that I definitely would like to address. But there are other issues, just making sure, okay, I have to stop. I will love to talk to you about this after, though.
Thank you, Heather and Marisa.
So I'm sitting here thinking of the roles of county commissioner and the things that they fund. One thing that they fund are the public libraries, and I've seen some really cool programs. I take my son to our local public library, and they always have something going on, whether it's a reading time or some sort of community event where people can get together. And I think that's one positive way, that because everybody wants to feel like they're a meaningful contribution, whether you have a disability or not, right? You're still a human being, and in your heart, when you feel like you're contributing in a meaningful way, you feel good about yourself. So I would look to find ways within the county that we can, no matter whether someone has a disability, doesn't have a disability, channel their unique talents and abilities into providing a meaningful contribution to the community. That's non-specific, but I think that's where I'm going to leave it.
Very good. Thank you, Marisa. Marisa, we'll start with you with this next question. What role do the county libraries have in helping to address literacy?
So I remember being a little girl, and because I was homeschooled, my mom would take me, I was the oldest, my brother and my sister, up to our local library, and we would do the song and story time for many, many years. Afterwards, we would pick out books, and she would read them to us during the day at home. We'd read them to each other. I was the oldest. I'd read them to my siblings. I remember reading the Boxcar Children books, the Curious George, all of those. And one of the biggest predictors of your children's success is just sitting down and reading them books. My son and I go to the library, and right now he's on Max and Ruby books. So taking that time, the library provides an opportunity where it's always fresh, always exciting. You can go and you can find a new book, and you can sit down with your kids and read. It comes back to the level of home and family and being there with the people that you love and supporting their growth.
Thank you, Marisa. And Heather.
Thank you. So literacy is really important to me. I have dyslexia. Our twin sons have dyslexia. As somebody growing up to a single mom, in a school that had not a lot of resources, I didn't have intervention. Our sons now go to Groves twice a week for reading intervention, but at the Capitol, I was the author of the READ Act, and I worked on literacy for 6 years. One of the things actually that I worked on was making sure that we had the best practices. Do you know that only 50% of our kids are reading at grade level right now? So take like half of this room, and only half of you can read, and then tell me how successful you're going to be at life. So right now we have 6 pilots going on in 6 different libraries, having reading tutors work with students. So it's not income based, it's making sure that all kids have access to good literacy intervention, because those are our values in Hennepin County, right? But we need to have more than that. So one of the things with the READ Act that I did last year is I made reading partners who actually they get all the volunteers, which by the way are community volunteers, and you can go through the training after you do a criminal background check, but they need more volunteers, and so we need more people to help our kids learn how to read. So as you're thinking about what you can do to help your community, that's a really good way to do it.
Thank you, Heather. All right, we'll switch topics now to affordable housing. Heather, we'll start with you. How would you address the need for more affordable housing?
Well, the county has actually some great action that it's doing to address affordable housing. And affordable housing has a lot of red tape, right? You're working with a lot of different districts, a lot of different cities. And so trying to figure out where the properties can go, the funding mechanisms, the developers that can develop them. So a county really does play an integral part of trying to get good properties built. There's one actually, I was talking to the Watershed District about this. One's opening tomorrow, I believe, in Hopkins, but we have another one that is being held up because of a developer is having a hard time getting the capital in order to build. And so these are real challenges that if this continues to happen, we have to look at that. But know that I'm committed to that. I will say one of the things that I really want to focus on is the fact that climate change is really impacting how we insure all of our homes. And so really, whether or not you might be living in an affordable housing unit, your property actually might become, in essence, unaffordable for you. So this is something where next session, I really want to see us look at a state home insurance plan like other states have done that are impacted by climate change. And actually, Minnesota is a state that is really impacted by climate change, though you wouldn't necessarily think it.
Thank you, Heather. And Marisa?
So traditionally, when we think of affordable housing, there's possibly one mental image that comes to mind, and I'm curious to look at it from a little bit of a different lens. Those of us who live in a home are currently able to afford our houses. And so it's finding a balance, right? There are programs and services who provide the first type of affordable housing that we think of to meet that need for people who need support, but also addressing the crime within the communities drives up property insurance. It drives up our car insurance. When you put in your zip code, if there's been a lot of crimes in that area, your rate's going to be higher. And just by changing the zip code and testing it out, you can see just different prices based on the location. So one, addressing some of these crime issues. Two, approving the property tax petitions for people so that they haven't personally benefited from the alleged equity increases of their home. And so why should their property taxes go up? So approving property tax petitions, addressing crime appropriately.
Thank you, Marisa. This should be our last question this evening, and it is on climate. Marisa, we'll start with you. What is Hennepin County's current plan to adopt to longer-term climate change trends and to respond to extreme weather events attributed to or exacerbated by climate change? And which parts of that plan have been achieved?
So one thing we probably all, there was a big, I don't know if you guys remember, there was a couple weeks ago, a huge storm, everything got dark, there was, I don't know if we had hail, I just knew I was out at an event with my son, and that was quite an exciting ride home. But on the way, we had multiple alerts on our phones that let us know this is from Hennepin. There's this, before the storm, the torrential rain, the black clouds started going down. We should start heading out and heading back home. So prevention is always better than cure. And so letting people know ahead of time about some of these storms and weather issues. Two, people say that there's a lot of trash, a huge amount of garbage. We can't put it all anywhere. I think there are innovative people out there that to appropriately address the issue of lots of garbage, lots of packaging. There's tried and true ways that wouldn't be rushing in. There's implemented models that have already been done, already been created elsewhere, that if you have something that's working, you just model off of it.
Thank you, Marisa. And Heather?
Thank you. So our last question of the night is actually, this is a good one. It's an important one for our communities, and our kids know this more than ever, right? Kids mostly are talking about climate change because they can feel it real time. I would say the climate action plan is quite extensive, but some of what things that I really care about that actually are in that climate action plan are making sure that we are doing weatherization, that we are housing people, that we are making sure that we are moving towards green energy and clean transportation. Hennepin County is densely populated. It's 1.3 million people. And we have a responsibility to each other to take care of one another. And so making sure that we have climate resilient housing, making sure we have food for our residents, making sure there's weatherization, that there's access to services. All of these things, we have a ring at Hennepin County. It's all the things that we care about. It's like the Venn diagram, and I think it's honestly the Venn diagram of a lot of our how we believe and how we care for each other. And so I think there's a lot of ways that we can invest in climate change, and I'm really excited for the future.
Thank you, Heather. Now we will proceed with our closing remarks, and Marisa will begin with you. Again, this is a 1-minute closing remark.
At the meeting last night, Keith Ellison said something that really stuck with me. He said, "Cynics will never change the world. The people who change the world are the ones who keep trying and never give up." Many of you know the Man in the Arena speech from Teddy Roosevelt. He said, "There's no effort without error and shortcoming." So we all have the opportunity to partner together in the community to preserve the American dream of home ownership, bring more restorative justice to our community, and continue creating a ever-evolving, better vision of a future. This November 5th election is about the vision that we all will create together. It's about all of us, the we, not the me, and it's about the future and legacy that we leave for those that we love. Keith Ellison said, it's not how many times you fall. There's a documentary going around called The Fall of Minneapolis. You guys have probably seen or heard. It feels like right now is the time. Minneapolis may have fallen, but it's time for Minneapolis to get up again. It's time for Hennepin County to get up again. And all of us rise by lifting each other up.
Thank you, Marisa and Heather.
Well, it's good to see all of you tonight, and thank you for coming out. I know that when you are looking at your evening, you're trying to decide what to do, and thank you for showing up. It means a lot. So I will tell you this. The Heather Edelson you see right here that's talking to you right now is the Heather Edelson you see on social media. It's the same person that you see out in the community doing the important work to make sure that we're taking care of each other. There are not two different versions of me. And I think that we need balanced representation. That's what you get with me. You get somebody that turns out, that shows up, that sometimes will disagree with you. That is definitely something that I have done with people. But ultimately, we need government to have serious discussions and really figure out how do we find solutions. Because when we're talking about labor issues, you know what labor wants? Labor wants to get paid so that they can send their kids to the schools that they need to go to, or that they can go on to college, or that they want us to show up. And so this is how we do it. We show up, we go to these forums, we figure out who's the best candidate. And I will tell you, I hope to have your support because I've been working really hard. And with me, you get what you see. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Heather. This concludes the Hennepin County District 6 Candidate Forum. On behalf of the League of Women Voters, I thank the candidates for being part of the democratic process by running for office and for being willing to serve our community. Thank you also to the League of Women Voters volunteers, our audience here, and those viewing this event virtually for your participation in this candidate forum. Thank you to the Minnetonka City staff for supporting this event and for Comcast for broadcasting live streaming, and recording tonight's forum. On-demand viewing can be accessed at lwvwpa.org. For additional election information, we encourage you to visit vote411.org, the League of Women Voters award-winning one-stop shop where voters can register to vote, find their polling place, and learn how candidates stand on issues. Please remember to vote in the November 5th election by absentee ballot or in person. Your vote is your voice, and early voting begins September 20th. The League of Women Voters welcomes new members, both men and women, again at lwvwpa.org. This ends the candidate forum tonight. Thank you and good night. Let's please give our candidates a round of applause with saying thank you.